Under the same moon, we share the love, embracing the differences like hand in glove. Spreading peace and joy, it's a beautiful sight. Together we shine in each other's light. And how do we stand in love's pure might? Watching the world share in love and light. Hearts beating as one in our peaceful flight. Colors of harmony painting the night. United we stand in love's pure might.
Well, good evening, everyone. We welcome back. We were just on just an hour ago. We had 42,000 people. We welcome so many people to have these discussions. When it comes to politics, you know, here at Watching the World, we try to stay so unbiased, but we bring you the solid points. Tonight, we have a special guest, Candace Kelly. She feels like a teammate, a homemate. As a law professor, to be able to come on the channel and really teach us and show us different things about the law as we take a lot of these cases and put it to the light. It's nice to be able to ask these questions. So tonight we're going to go through Donald Trump. We're going to talk about Epstein. We're going to talk about Diddy. And we're going to talk about a new case called Tony Earls. It's a case we're going to talk about toward the end of the show. But it's a case that you don't want to miss. Believe me when I tell you, it's very exciting. It has a lot of turns and twists to the case. But I did want to bring up something first that I wanted to know if you guys had heard about it. In fact, I'm going to do so by bringing up the one and only Candace Kelly. Candace, how are you doing?
Good. How are you doing, Mel? Always good to see you. You had a lot of listeners, a lot of viewers, huh?
Yeah, a lot going on. And you saw I started to catch a second wind, and then I said, oh, I have to bring up Candace because I'm about to start talking. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Hey, listen, this has been an exciting week, especially after the election day yesterday. So it's all good because people really want to talk, and I know that's why you do this show, and that's why I like to come on. It's nice to exchange ideas. That's what we are here for on this earth to do, exchange ideas and be better.
It's so amazing. In fact, many said that you add softness to the channel. So,
Well, thank you. Listen, I'll take it. I'll take softness. Is that a new hot word? Is that like demure? I don't know, but I will take it. I will take it.
All right. So, as I was about to say, have you heard that they're going to cancel Thanksgiving, Veterans Day, Christmas, and Black Friday this year? Boycott. That's what I've heard about. Have you heard anything about it?
No, listen, tell me a little bit more about that. That's one of those hot topics. There's so much news out there. You don't catch everything. But is this a boycott presented by who? Should I guess? Who is this boycott presented by?
I'm not totally sure. I'm not sure if it's the No Kings, if it's just the Democrats, if it's blacks. I'm not sure, but I did hear about it. In fact, one of the viewers, AI, talked about it today. I've heard about it on different channels too, but pretty much they're going to try to block out these holidays to fight back.
And I think that is one of the things that social media is good for. I know we hear a lot of arguments about what social media is not good for, but it collects people to do things like this. And we know that when you collect people and you stop putting your dollars in places that are expected to receive your dollars, that is when people start listening. So that's all I can say about that we know where the money is where change will be made. It's unfortunate that it comes to that point, but we know historically that it's always been like that, Mel. It's always been like that.
Yeah. AI MedSpa said this was planned last month. Can you define who's behind this big movement, AI? Just tell us what you think. Let me tell you this, right? Earlier in the year, because I follow stocks and investing pretty heavily, right?
Mm-hmm.
Target on Facebook, I had Facebook friends who try to be so educated. They said, oh, they're trying to boycott Target. It's never going to work because they were following the pastor. I think his last name is Bryant, right?
Sure, Jamal Bryant.
Right. He says, okay, no Target, right?
Yeah,
Lo,
no, no
lo and
target.
behold, Target took a major financial hit. Stocks down tremendously. And I was shocked just by telling people, especially African American people, not to support Target. It really affected their bottom line.
Yeah, it affected their bottom line, and the reason that it did is because people were sick and tired. And it affected their bottom line because there's a core group of people that are, there are a lot of boycotts. It's just that this one really took hold because everybody got on board. And then that momentum, it got to a point where if I had a friend of mine, she said, I need to go to the store, but I don't want to go to Target. I don't want anybody to see me there. I don't even want anybody black or white see me there because it's not just a black thing. It is largely a black thing. But there's some people from other races who are like, yeah, we're going to do this. But you see these dollars, and there's a shame that you have if you even. I went to pull out some lunch, try to pull out a Target bag. I said, should I even pull out the bag? I wasn't there, but it's a bag from last year. So it's come to that point where we are recognizing what we are capable of doing. And, you can be shamed into not going into a store. It's not a bad thing if the end result is that it makes a difference. And in the Target case, it had to do with DEI. So, it's making a difference. And I think that there are different conversations that are being had at Target and other stores because they don't want to be at the end of a boycott.
Right. AI Medspa says it's backed by the sisterhood. So that's who, I'm not sure the details of that, but that's what we have so far.
Yeah, and you can never be really sure online. I mean, there could be more than one faction behind any boycott. It's just one of those things that, and for people who aren't doing it, I think that's okay too. People are boycotting Amazon. People are boycotting different things. It's good to have all of the numbers behind one place to make a point, but I don't think that people should be shamed into it, but they kind of should be ashamed if they know the kind of deal that's behind Target in terms of DEI and how it just cut everything out like it was nothing. Think about the George Floyd days. And I mean, there was one bank that offered $1 billion it was going to put towards DEI, and Target rose, and AT&T rose, and Comcast rose. Everybody was rising to the occasion. Now, Mel, seems like there's no occasion, so there's no rising. So
Right.
people had to take matters into their own hands.
Right. I was watching your show you did the other day for lunch. It was amazing, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. That was fun. I like, hearing comments, and it's great that people are tuning in. I love the way that the media landscape has changed over the years. I've been doing this for a long time, but it's great to see everybody have a voice, and it rings truer online that those voices are equalized. So I really like doing it.
Right. I noticed you used the photo of Diddy that came out, I guess, from TMZ of him being in the jail or the prison yard.
Yeah, there was Diddy on the prison yard. I'm expecting somebody to be in trouble. I don't know where that picture came from, but it was one that a lot of people had a lot of comments on, in that he was smiling and interacting. So it took on a lot of narratives in terms of what's coming up. I do know this. I know that his appeal was fast tracked. Normally appeals take a little longer, but he's got dates. He's cut through some red tape in order to get his appeal. That just came out, I think yesterday.
I wanted to ask you, did you see how that picture has now evolved into AI with him dancing with the other inmates in the prison yard?
Mel, what are we going to do about AI? What are we going to do about AI doing this to people? It's incredible. With free subscriptions to these various apps, you can make Sean Combs dance. You can make Sean Combs sing. You can make Sean Combs maybe point back at you. That's a shame. I mean, really, AI and what people are doing, it has gone too far. It's gone too far. There are a lot of these people who will take a picture of their loved one who has passed, and then they'll send a video and say, look at the way that dad came alive. I don't want to see that. Let's just stick to the original. I do not want to see a picture of my father who has passed, walking down the street as if it's really, really him. I don't want to see. I don't want to see Sean Combs dancing, break dancing. Eventually, it's going to, and I say hit, like the law's got to jump in some way. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense for AI to get this far. It doesn't. But a lot of people are making money. I understand it. I see the draw. I see the draw.
Yeah, they'll make anything, right?
They will, and that's a problem. They'll make anything. They'll make anything. I mean, there are laws that are already on the book. It's called the Take It Down law, the Take It Down statute, where if you do something sexually, right, because you can put a head on somebody's body and it makes you look like you're doing a lot of things sexually. There are laws that are on the books. I would imagine that, I mean, you could sue somebody for false light. Everybody will look it up. But that could be, a way. I mean, if I was portrayed in a way that wasn't proper and that I felt kind of highly offended, I could sue for it in the name of AI. But the law just hasn't caught up. All right. But I don't want to see me swimming or climbing Mount Everest because someone's taken my head and put it on. I mean, that's not fair to me. Even if it's something that's not sexual or something that's, not terribly unreasonable. Like, okay, so I'm swimming, but that's not me, and that's my right to who I am and my name and image and likeness. So therein lies the problem. The law will catch up, but they're slow.
Now, I know that you teach and you specialize in defamation. How does that work? Is there a different parameter for a person that's a regular civilian versus a person that's a public figure?
Oh yeah, there's a really big difference. The thresholds are very different in that as a regular person, your Aunt May May in Pennsylvania, if she sees a picture of her on a cereal box in the store, that's going to be a problem because they've used her name, image, and likeness. She's going to have an easier time suing for that, and she's going to have an easier time if someone defames her. But celebrities, let's say, I was just watching something with Idris Elba. If he sues, his threshold is much higher because he is a celebrity. He's going to have a harder time proving defamation because here's the truth about celebrities. They need us as much as we need them. If we stop talking about Idris Elba ever, and he never saw his name, was never in People, was never in US Weekly or was never on your show, that would be a problem. So there's a different threshold because celebrities enter into this world where they don't give up their privacy or right not to be defamed, but there certainly is a different level in which they give of themselves. They do give a little bit more because they want us to come buy tickets. They want us to tune into them on Hulu. So it's harder to prove defamation if you are a celebrity.
I'm starting to see a lot when it comes to defamation, especially, I attended Drake versus Kendrick Lamar, or at least the parent company. Ultimately, it looks like Drake did not win that case. It was dismissed. He's trying to appeal it. But are you shocked to see that more and more celebrities are trying to sue each other?
You know what? I am not. I am not. I think that years ago, and I'm talking 20, 30 years ago, when people sued for defamation, there was less at stake, meaning that, yes, you might be in the New York Times and there might be a defamation issue, or you might be on your local channel 2, CBS. Remember that was the time there were only 4 or 5 channels. Today, social media and the way that you're portrayed, if it's in a defamatory light, it can really kill who you are because everybody can receive the defamatory information within 5 seconds and share it with 500 other people, literally. So there goes your reputation. There goes who you've worked for. So I think that people are more inclined to work harder and quicker in order to stop defamatory information. Drake said, look, I'm not a pedophile. I do not like the way that he referred to me. I don't like his album cover where, it looked like where my house was, I was a pedophile. And there were other contractual issues that he thought his record company was doing to him. He didn't like what was said. And I have to say that calling someone a pedophile, yes, I know that it was in the middle of a song. And I think that I don't think he has a strong case. But when we talk about what you call someone that's going to get somebody mad and get you not to be looked at highly regarded in society, it's called them a pedophile. I mean, even if you say, well, somebody was found guilty of manslaughter, that versus a pedophile, who do you want next door, right? And that's what we mean in the world of defamation by bringing down somebody's reputation. And a reputation, once you lose it, hard to get back. Very hard to get back.
Exactly. A lot of celebrities are starting to follow in the footsteps of Donald Trump. In fact, they're saying it's okay to file bankruptcy because look at Donald Trump. He's rich. He's filed bankruptcy such and such time. Also, Donald Trump has gone after the legacy media. He's sued, I think, CBS or what
That's
have you,
right. Yeah.
15 million, right?
Yeah, CBS, ABC. I mean, it's been a lot of money, and he's putting it towards things, the money that he sees are beneficial to him. But I think what happens too is that when you involve mergers like Paramount and things that are kind of on the precipice of happening, and then you get the president involved who oversees the FCC, and they're the ones who ultimately have to approve some things, and that's all a part of the executive branch. So then things become murky. You're a station, you want this merger to be approved, so you might be more inclined to acquiesce and pay said money. I'm not saying that's the only reason that they paid it, but that was certainly the discussion in that boardroom, Mel, where they're figuring out, all right, we got to move these chess pieces properly, because if we don't do this, we may not get this merger approved, and that merger is going to help our bottom line dollar. So all of that comes into consideration. I think one of the things that people have been discussing a lot lately is that there is the judicial branch, the executive branch, and the legislative branch, but as of late, it's all becoming a little bit cloudy and not as separate as we've known it in the past. And that's the world that we're living in. That's the world that we're living in.
All right. I did notice that Donald Trump is going after the Department of Justice for over 200 million, I believe. And he said, well, if it happens, if they pay it, I'm okay with it going toward the big ballroom, the big, beautiful ballroom. A lot of people are confused. How does a sitting president take money from the Department of Justice?
Yeah, well, I think that Donald Trump is a man that is full of precedents, right? He's creating a lot of precedents that future courts can look at and say, hey, this may not have happened before, but Donald Trump set the precedent. He decided to sue. Some people who are in the past who have been sitting presidents have not found it in good form to sue. I found it to be rather tacky to sue, because you are, in fact, the president, right? You generally don't sue for defamation when you're sitting in these particular positions, but he's really changed the game. He has done a lot by taking the law into his hands and creating precedents. The other thing that we know that he's done is that he has stacked the federal courts with 100 and something, 200 and something federal judges, so that when those decisions, they might come in front of a particular court, those cases might be heard one way or the other, because he has, in fact, appointed someone who's Republican. But that's how it's always been. Democrats, they appoint Democrats, and Republicans, they appoint Republicans. Not making fault of it, just talking to you about how it works and how he might see how suing would be beneficial, because he knows how the courts are stacked.
At one point I was covering the Epstein files pretty much every day because it was such a hot topic. Everybody's talking about Epstein files. Now it seems that it slowed down, and I guess a lot has to do with Mike Johnson and the whole voting situation. But it looks like Prince Andrew has taken the ultimate hit behind the Epstein files. Have you followed that any?
Yeah, so it's interesting because, as you know, at first he removed the titles himself, like the Yorks and the Dukes. Those are official titles that he was known for. But recently, this week, Prince Charles went through the formal process of removing those from him. And he had to remove himself from the Royal Lodge, which is where he's been living for a very long time, for decades. So he's going to now move to a private facility. So it's not in the headlines the way that we've seen it, Epstein, but it is always percolating. In fact, was it Congressman Jamie Raskin just yesterday? He said, look, I don't know why you stopped this investigation. You've got 50 women who their documents and their facts all about what they say happened with Epstein, yet you shut the case. Why are you doing this? So those questions are still arising, and Democrats and Republicans, that's the difference. Both of them. Remember, Marjorie Taylor Greene was out there with the victims during the one of the recent rallies. So it's Democrats and Republicans. People have run on it, right? We've got the FBI director. He has said, hey, we got to see this information. So I don't think it's going anywhere. And it's been in the headlines, and we see how it is trickling. It's trickling down, and it's kind of around so much in the ether that even though Prince Andrew removed the titles himself, Prince Charles said, no, I'm going to do you one better. I'm going to go through the formal process and have those titles removed for you. So it's still a hot button issue. It's not going to go away. And it might be kind of what people have been thinking about. I mean, that and the government shutdown. But who knows whether the Epstein files is still a source of hurt for folks who believed in Trump, that he was going to get out all this information. And they went to the polls and maybe they said, you know what? I don't think he's telling the truth. I don't know, but that's out there, as well as the government shutdown. So it all kind of is a domino effect, very much so.
You know, the Democrats are saying now, especially with the blue wave, that they're going to be able to take back everything, or at least a great part of it, during the midterm elections, right?
Yeah.
But right now, the Republicans and MAGA, they're sitting pretty good in a sweet spot. I don't think that they would put Epstein above their political stance and their posture, even though you would think that people would ultimately want to do the right thing. Especially, we have Virginia, what is her name, Dufresne or what have you, and how her life was ended.
That's right.
But that's my position. I think that takes precedence over the files.
Yeah. So do you think that there were any voters that thought in the back of their mind, there were those Epstein files? I mean, there might have been, but you're saying more than that, it might have been the government shutdown.
Right. I think more than that, more than the Epstein files, I think Republicans are happy to have everything, and they're sitting at a higher elevation. And I think they don't want to disturb that over the Epstein file, even though we saw what happened with Prince Andrew and how we saw such great measures.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the other thing that I've noticed, that with Trump, you don't have a victim coming forward saying he did this to me per se.
Right.
So,
I mean,
so that makes a big. Right now, it's just, he's mentioned in the file. Some people say, well, he was just taking a ride on the airplane, and some say, he didn't do that even. So it's debatable, but it's not like you have a face like Virginia saying, the president did this to me. And I think that's the deciding factor for many of these individuals.
Yeah, and I would agree, because even when you look at the sexual assault case that he lost, that's already been settled and that's closed and that's a done deal. I don't think anybody's really thinking about that either. In fact, I think that he could still gain a lot of support in many ways. Though I would say the support that he threw to Andrew Cuomo, I don't know if that might be a telltale sign as to whether or not he could carry a lot of weight in New York City at the very least, because it certainly didn't do what I think he thought it was going to do. And I think the timing was off too. If you're going to get behind somebody, you can't do it the day before.
Right.
Yeah. So I think all of that comes into play when you're thinking of, all right, where does the power fall? I think if you look at Mamdani, I think you can see where the power falls and what people are thinking about when they go to the poll. Now, you're in New York City, Did you, there were a lot of promises that Mamdani made. Do you see, for example, free busing happen? I mean, you have lived there, you know the system intimately. Does that make sense to you?
Well, having a background in tax, in finance, I realized that this is going to show up in the taxes. Like, how can you get around it? So basically, even if your life is great and you leave a home to your family, your children are going to at some point be paying those taxes for many years to come. He wants to offer free child care, grocery stores,
That's right.
busing. Like, you know how many people live in New York City? Like, how
Yeah.
is this really going to be funded? I mean, it might be a righteous cause, but somebody has to pay for it. That's the point. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the other thing, if I'm living in Ohio or Pennsylvania, I might think, let me go on over to New York City because they got a lot of good stuff going. It is going to attract more people. So I thought about I thought about that particular fact that I don't know where it will end up because it might be so popular, it might be an overwhelming experience. But he said that he's going to tax the rich in order to get those monies. But still, I, I I think that there are a lot of problems that he could foresee that he now has to work on making sure doesn't happen if that is what he's going to do. I'm not saying I can't see it at all possibly happening. In fact, it happened during COVID for a period of time. It happened during COVID. They said it was going to happen for a few months. It actually happened for a year. So this isn't the first time that they would be giving out at least, free buses and maybe even something else. But I know they gave out, they, meaning the city, gave free transportation. So it has worked before. I just think now we're looking at it at a larger level, longer too. And then you got to worry about the economy and whether or not people are just going to come in by droves to New York City because you don't want that. And you know how I know they don't want that, Mel? Because of that extra, what's that called? That congestion uh, that I pay every time when I come in the
It's a
city.
toll. It's a toll. Yeah.
That toll. Do you know how much I paid during Sean Combs' trial? Okay. I mean, every time I came through during a certain hours, charging me, charging me, charging me. I mean, it wasn't a deterrent because I had to be there and I would rather drive, but I could see how that would deter some people and then move them to public transportation. So you have that too, in terms of the drivers that are going to be taking public transportation. And now if it's free, even more people are going to come. So that's a wait and see. Got to see how that turns out.
So how does this look? In fact, Teddy says this is going to show up in the taxes of the top 1%. So he's pushing for tax the rich. Donald Trump
Yes.
Donald Trump is on the other side of the spectrum. Tax the poor, not the rich, right?
Well,
He
is it, would you say tax the poor? I don't know. What's your opinion?
I think ultimately most societies tax the poor, the rich get whatever they want. Also, the second part of that, in his speech, he talked about how he was welcoming immigrants.
Yes.
Donald Trump is the other side of the spectrum. So that's two
He,
cases, you see.
yeah, he is. And you know what? I could see tax the poor literally and figuratively because the poor are taxed with the SNAP benefit program and it going away, right? So I could definitely see that. And when it comes to immigration, I mean, well, Donald Trump has spoken and acted on immigration policies. We see that happening. And I think that Mondani's words were really very cutting when he talked about immigrants, being a part of the fabric of New York City and managing it and growing it. And now a mayor leads it. I don't. That did not sit well with Donald Trump. And as he said, he might penalize them by taking away federal funds. But we will see. We will see. But I will say that what Donald Trump has said often and many times has come to fruition.
Right. You can pretty much count on it. One of the things that stood out to me too is that when it comes to food stamps,
Yeah.
they're putting in one of the new stipulations of where you have to work at least 20 hours a week. And if you can't find a job, you can go volunteer. But they want you to aggressively continue to try to find employment.
Yeah, you'd sent me something on that today, and I thought, that's very much like a typical unemployment process where they are encouraging you. You can't just sit at home, right? You have to at least go out and be active, even if it's
Right.
volunteering, go out and contribute. And I think that that's what they're just trying to make sure that they don't create someone who's collecting a check and then sitting home and watching Netflix all day. So, I mean, I definitely get it. I just think that it's to a point now where it's different if you're, in unemployment 10 months ago, because you have a higher likelihood to get a job. Now you've got federal government workers out of jobs. You've got, people who are trying to manage work and get more jobs because the SNAP benefits aren't there. You've and there are people who are out of work anyway. You've got the cost of living. You have so many people competing now for jobs that might have had 10 applications, might really now have 100. So it's going to be a very, very difficult process for people to be gainfully employed at this time. If you get a job these days that is a salary that you like, you go play the lottery, because you are a winner, because it is very, very difficult to do today. Now, a lot of people are jumping in Uber, but you have to have a car that rises to the occasion of Uber's qualifications, right? Or you have to have a car to do these types of jobs where you're going shopping for someone or you're doing DoorDash. It really, one thing plays into the other. One thing plays into the other.
Right. Here's a question for you before we transition into Tony Earl.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about Donald Trump sending the National Guard into the inner cities?
Well, listen, Donald Trump, well, now, where do we go with this? Donald Trump is trying to make a point about what it means to have the National Guard and police presence in an area where there might be crime, poverty, and homelessness. He's only making a point to an extent in that if you have the National Guard somewhere, of course crime is going to go down. What happens when they leave, right? So a long-term plan has to be in effect. Those are my thoughts about it. Of course, again, you're going to see the numbers of people off the street, and crime is going to go down. If you have 2,000 people from various states all come and descend upon Washington, D.C. But those numbers are not real, right? They're like what we see on Instagram. I call it Insta scam. It's really not real. It's just for show. So what the long-term plan is, that's really where the answer is going to be in all of this. And of course, we know that he's sending people into cities that are that have African-American males. I do not think that is, I think that is by design. And I think that he is trying to make a point, and that's based upon his history and how he perceives people from outside countries, outside races. He says one thing, often his actions speak otherwise. All of it is to be debated for those of you who are listening out there, but his actions do tell a story. What are your thoughts about that?
You know what? I actually predicted it on my Facebook when right before he actually took office. I said he would send probably the army or something into Chicago because there were so many killings every weekend. Like some weekends, 12 people shot. I said Donald Trump is gonna, if he get into office, he's gonna send the military over there.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah,
I understand. I mean, I understand how we got here,
yeah.
but some people feel like there's something also where if power it's time for power to exchange, that he would use the military to stay in the office. So you hear that in the background, but I do think crime is a major issue in the United States.
And let me make this other point. I know we're moving on to another topic, but if you are going to go into a state and you are not making nice with the governor like he did in Maryland, who said, listen, let's work together. Let's try to bring the crime down, but let's do that step and figure out what the issue is before you bring the National Guard and bring down the morale of the people. Now, you could argue, oh, but it's going to bring up the morale of the people because crime will go down. You can have both exist. But he said, let's go step by step. And the Department of Justice, the government said, no, we want to just come in and take over. So I think that you have a governor of a state, you have to befriend and play nice. That's what politics is all about. Finding a medium. Doesn't even have to be a happy medium. A medium. Where are we going to meet in order to make this happen? So let me leave that there.
Right. I'm producing a video that kind of breaks down. Donald Trump says that in Washington, D.C., at least, they're going to implement the death penalty if you commit any major crime.
Yeah, and you know what? Because of Washington D.C. And its statehood, it's something that falls under his purview, and that's why he's able to do so much in D.C. Unlike in Illinois, where the governor said, no, you're not. Where the mayor of Chicago said, yeah, no, you're not. So D.C. Is one of those places where he has much more power, and he's going to use that as an example for other places before he tries to continue to do the same thing. If he said it, he's going to do everything that he can to do it. That's what we know. Listen, it hasn't even been a year yet. I mean, for all the things he's done, it feels like it's been 2.5 years. I'm serious.
Yeah, right.
It hasn't even been a year yet. So what he is saying and doing, he is putting that, metal to the pedal. For real. He is.
I felt like the first time around, he basically had to learn his way through, and a lot of his key individuals turned on him, right? But
Yeah.
when he came in the second time, he had a whole think tank and he had a whole network of people, and I mean loyalists, right? And I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
and I think they came in day one. We're going to do 1, 2, 3. You're going to win, and that's what we've been seeing. So it's been tremendous progress. I mean, a lot of people did feel like Joe Biden was missing in action. Maybe it was his health, but that is something that I also heard before Trump came in.
His first election was like what they call the starter marriage, right? When people have been married twice or 3 times, they don't count that first marriage. They're like, that was just starter marriage. I was learning my way. I was young. I was trying to figure it out. That's what his first election was like. It was like a starter marriage. It was just kind of a tryout. And then, like you said, that second time, Project 25 was in place. And then there was more order. There definitely was more order. Absolutely.
All right, very good. So I'm going to go ahead and cue up the video here. We'll see how this goes.
All right. Yeah, we are moving on to Tony Earls.
Okay, so do you want to give the briefing on it, or well, your video will? That's right. Your video breaks it down
Yeah.
nicely. I forgot that.
Let's take a look at behind the scenes of what went on with Tony Earls, who was just recently sentenced to 20 years for manslaughter.
Okay, very good.
Right at the ATM, Tony Earls Jr. and his wife were robbed at gunpoint. The robber took off over a fence to a nearby apartment complex. But another family, the Alvarez family, including daughter Arlene, were just going to dinner. Earls fired multiple shots at their truck as it passed, thinking that truck was the robbers. One bullet struck Arlene in the head and she died.
3.5 years, I never had a chance to ask them for forgiveness. I pray and I ask God for forgiveness all the time. And I can't get past me not asking them to forgive me for my mistakes that I made that night, my decisions that I made.
Oh, none of us are the same. My husband's not the same. I'm not the same. Armando Jr. is not the same. And we've had trauma. We don't sleep well.
Earls received the maximum sentence of 20 years for manslaughter.
Yeah. Pretty compelling.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
So, where do we start with this case? I mean, it was just a regular night going to the ATM that turned out of control, right?
Yeah, Valentine's Day in 2022, it was just a series of terribly unfortunate events that started out, as we saw, with being robbed at the car at the ATM. And Earls took it upon himself to chase down what he thought was the suspect's car. And it wasn't. It actually happened to be another family that was going out on that Valentine's Day. So he is shooting at a car that he is thinking is the car that belonged to his assailant, to the robber. And that is where the issue comes in as to how do you even charge this guy? And then, you know, he was in a state where you can defend your home or your car. But what was his intent? In fact, when this went to the grand jury at first, it went to the grand jury for aggravated. He was charged with aggravated assault, but then when it went to the grand jury, it went to the grand jury for things like negligent homicide, manslaughter, murder. There were different things that a grand jury could choose from to indict him on, and they chose not to indict him at all because I think a lot of them maybe, and I don't know if you felt this way, but could you see himself in the same shoes as him? And maybe you, Mel, find yourself going after someone and then just kind of in the heat of the moment, making a mistake. Does that seem like a possibility for you? Did it seem reasonable to you for this guy, Tony Earls?
Yeah, it seemed reasonable to me. Let me tell you why. When the guy robbed them, he ran down the hill.
Yeah.
And he ran past the sign, so the sign blocked the guy running, the robber. At the same time, that family, the husband and wife says, oh, let's just stop and get some money for dinner. And they decide to go to the bank. Simultaneously, they saw the robber coming past their car running. And they say, I think this guy robbed someone at the bank. So they sped off. So Tony Earl didn't get a chance to see. He thought the robber got into this truck and was speeding off. And he emptied 10 shots in their direction. Now, I'm not saying it's right, but I'm just saying he got confused.
That you can understand, especially with the adrenaline going and things of that nature, that he got confused in that moment. It's like everything met up. I think, just to finish the grand jury side, when it went back to the grand jury did indict him for murder, and then they brought down that to manslaughter. So he was ultimately convicted of manslaughter. And the reason that's really important is because a murder charge, you would have to show the intent. And he did not intend to kill that girl. So that's why they brought it down to a manslaughter charge where it doesn't have the intent. I think a lot of people are shocked that he got the 20 years. I didn't think he would get that much time, especially look back at the grand jury. They didn't even indict him at first. So there was a lot of murkiness here, especially again in a state where you can carry a gun and defend your car, defend your home. With the same token, what do you do through the Alvarez family? You don't have your daughter anymore. I really want to hear from people. Would they find him 100% guilty? Or do they think he just should have gone to jail for a couple of years? 20 years. 20 years.
I'm starting to see more and more cases where the grand jury lets people off, but then the community raised such an uproar that they changed their mind, to really push the case.
Yeah, here's what I wouldn't want happening. I mean, I'm a mother and I go to the store and I run into this guy. Yeah, I mean, I can understand why the community would definitely make an uproar. I can also kind of see what happened with him. But somebody has to be responsible, I think, ultimately, because but for Earls, the little girl would be alive, and she's not. He did that. It was his mistake. And people, even when you make mistakes, you are held accountable for what you did. I'm just not sure. No, I'm positive that 20 years, that was way too much. By the way, we saw him sitting in the witness stand. He wasn't actually testifying. What he was doing was he was giving a statement during the sentencing phase. He only called a couple of witnesses. One of them was an expert witness that talked about exactly what you talked about, which is that, what happens when you're caught up in the moment and you might be confused and the adrenaline is going and it's kind of fight or flight situation. So you had an expert try to contextualize exactly what you said, that when you're in the moment, hey, I'm confused. I didn't know. It all seemed to make sense for me, but my intent was not to kill this little girl.
Yeah, I think if you try that in New York, you're going to take a long journey, but he was in a stand your ground state, if I'm not mistaken, right? And I think
Exactly.
the rules are a little bit different. In fact, when he got back in the car and they were driving out, they got to the road, he let off his 10th shot in the direction of the vehicle. So imagine the family probably at this point, they realize the daughter has been hit, trying to console or figure it out. And
Yeah.
he lets off another bullet, and I don't see them calling the police.
Yeah.
So I think that's the big problem in this case. There's no call. I don't know for a fact, but I don't think they stayed there and called the police.
You mean that the Alvarez family?
Yes, I think they took off from what I saw in the video.
Yeah, yeah. They took off. He had told everybody, get down, get down. The little girl had earphones on. She couldn't hear. So I think they went to the hospital at that point because they saw that she was struck. And I'm sure that somebody called the police along the way, but they had to get the girl who was struck to the hospital, their daughter. As we saw during the sentencing phase, the mother, took the stand and talked about how it changed her family. And as we know from the Sean Combs trial, that sentencing is real. That's when real evidence comes out to try to prove that this person has a value system that can't be shooken, shaped, one of the words, and that it's good and that it's solid. And that's what listen, Earls, Tony Earls' father also took the stand to talk about his son. And he's like, listen, you're making him out to be this person. He's not that person. We saw during the Sean Combs trial how there was a video, and at one point it felt like we were in church. There was a pastor who came up. That sentencing phase and portion of the trial is really, really important, because this is the time where before the judge makes his decision, you can say this person really is worth rehabilitation, and we can let them back out into society. But 20 years is a long time. There are people who don't go to jail for intentional murders for that. That's my only problem with this case. 20 years is a long, long time.
Yeah, I've seen people here in New York get 7 years for murder, right?
Yeah. I think one thing, obviously, that did not work in his favor is there was a video of him that was played during court a couple of times of him fighting his stepson, and he also pulled out a gun there. And that's, we've talked about this before, how anything you do in life, it can make its way into a court. I mean, that's not the only reason why you're a good citizen contributing to this world, but you best believe that if you get in trouble by the law, they can pull from anywhere to show what you have the proclivity to do. And that was not a good look. That was not a good look for him to be fighting plus the gun. I think fighting alone is like, what, in a convenience store? What happened in the convenience store between the Funyuns and the checkout counter, Mel, where you having to fight with your stepson, someone who you've married his mother? So not good, not good.
Right. But I think if he had called the police and said, "Hey, I was robbed and this occurred," but he did none of that. They just sped off after he let off another shot. So I think that impacted the case in a negative way too.
I think you're right. I think you're very right. This whole case of, I'm a vigilante and this is what's going to happen. It was just kind of, it was irresponsible. Specifically, it was reckless. And that is what prosecutors said. All this was just reckless. All of this was just reckless, which is a legal standard. But again, you have the expert witness that says once you get in a situation, your adrenaline is going, things are confusing. But it is something that the jury went for, nor did the judge. Because the judge, as we know, has a lot of discretion, and he could have been more lenient in the sentence, but he wasn't. He wasn't sold.
Right. Do you foresee or do you think an appeal will come through on this case?
Oh, he will definitely appeal. And I think that one good thing he's got a few good things going for him. That is, number one, this wasn't intentional. Number two, the grand jury didn't even charge him at first. And number three, he in fact was a victim himself, right? Where is this guy who actually committed the crime? And if you found him, wouldn't he also be largely responsible for the death of this little girl? The fact that he's not here makes it feel like Tony Earls is getting more of the brunt of the punishment. because the guy who started this domino effect, he's nowhere to be found. So Earls is getting all of the punishment of this whole process. I think it would be much different, and tell me if you agree, if in fact they also caught the robber.
Right. Right. I believe so.
Okay.
So let me ask you this question. When it comes to the law, during the appeal process, it's not a whole drug out case again, right? It's more pointed and to the point, right?
Yeah, it really speaks to whatever issue, be it constitutional, be it procedural. You're saying that something went wrong in this case. So we're not asking you to decide whether or not he was robbed or whether or not, well, actually, that's the Supreme Court. So on appeal, what you're saying is that there was an issue in the case, and based upon that issue, it should be appealed. In this one, I already mentioned what I think he can appeal on, but they're not going to go through the facts of the case. All of that's decided. They're just going through specific issues on appeal to determine whether or not that was right or wrong in terms of the law. And if it is wrong, if there's something that is procedurally wrong, well, then he gets another trial.
Right. When it comes to these cases, do you think it's a major difference between the public defenders versus a paid attorney or a team of attorneys?
Yes and yes. We just live in one of those societies where the system is set up where the more money you have to pay an attorney, $8.50 an hour or $3.50 an hour, well, they're going to be working and grinding for you. Now, there are some amazing public defenders, but anybody who's been reading the headlines and understand what's going on in that world, they are overworked. The cases are overbearing for them. People are leaving the field because there's no way to possibly, with the caseload, fairly defend someone, and that's not fair. You're supposed to get, if you, Miranda, if you cannot afford an attorney, one will be afforded to you. That's all in the effort to try to make sure you get a fair trial. Well, it's not fair if your defense attorney has a caseload that's overbearing and they can't pay attention to the details. Something gets lost. Much better to have a paid attorney. In addition to that, better to understand the law on your own too, because when you are picked up for anything, whether it's a DUI or speeding ticket or murder, your input counts a great deal. You're part of every process. So you better understand your case because you have the information because you were there and you're actually guiding your attorneys too. It's kind of like, a defendant who wants to take the stand. He can take the stand if he wants to. It's ultimately his decision. His attorneys will tell him not to, or her. But if a defendant ultimately wants to take the stand, they can because it's their case. They're in charge. And that's why I love these shows that you're doing, because people learn about the law. And that's what you need if you're going to be part of this justice system that you are paying for. It is your tax dollars.
Yeah, that reminds me of the Sean Diddy Combs case and how he did not take the stand. Right?
Yeah, he did not. Listen, and before that, he wanted to take that stand. He was determined, but that opens up a whole set of doors that you don't want to go in. You don't want to go down those doors because you don't know what's behind them. You don't know what. So yeah, he did not take the stand, and he didn't call any witnesses. The defense team was like, "We're good." So all of that, though, Sean Combs was a part of, and all of that. Again, if you're involved in the justice system, you're a part of that. You're managing these attorneys that you're paying for. Because if you're not paying for them out of your pocket as a private attorney, you are still paying for them out of your tax dollars if they're a public defender. So you're involved in the process.
Is there any case where an individual does well by defending themselves?
Hey, listen, there are some cases. The cases where a defendant does well is one where they're telling the truth. Let's just be real. Because you can get caught up in a lie very, very easily. Number two, a defendant does very well if they are a likable person. I'd be like, I like that guy. He seems believable, right? In fact, the fact that you take the stand, kind of, if I'm on the jury, I'm like, he might be pretty innocent. He's taking the chance to take the stand. Well, those are the people who make, and also a person who can remain calm. What is the worst thing? And this is what a defense attorney or prosecutor will do. is they will try to make a witness mad in order to take away from their testimony. So if the state is cross-examining you and you get mad or you blow up, you might as well call yourself having lost the case, because they see you being angry. So they can see you committing that murder, right? So you have to be a calm, cool, collected person who is telling the truth and who knows how to speak well and who knows how to articulate well and explain to someone exactly what happened.
All right. And just like that, we reached our time.
That's impossible. Mel, that's impossible.
It
It's
always
possible.
goes
It's not
always goes
fine.
rapidly, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it flies when you're having fun. Let's see. I want to get to just a few comments before we have like a few little minutes here.
Sure. Let's see
AI,
what the folks are saying.
AI Menspot says, I think Sean Diddy should have defended himself. He is rich.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know what they mean by defended himself, because he paid millions for attorneys. But yes, he is rich, and he was, if you remember, he was always writing in a notepad. He always had a file of his own. They spent many days with him going to jail. They wanted the hours of visitation extended because he was very much a part of that case, and he very much did defend himself.
Okay. Mike says, what the hell does it matter what someone else did? This guy ultimately decided to point the gun and pull the trigger 10 times. Case closed.
The judge agreed. That's what I can say about that. The judge agreed. The judge agreed that, again, this little girl would be here, but for Mr. Tony Earls. I can see exactly what the what that viewer is talking about. I can see that. I can definitely see that. But can they see 20 years for this? I'm not saying Tony Earls was not responsible. 20 years, though, I think that's where I got put a bookmark tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Have we had any update on our main character, Luigi Mangione?
Wow, Luigi Mangione. You know what? We know that he's going to be in court at the beginning of December. And then the case starts more so in the beginning. Is it January 9th? Off the top of my head, in the beginning of January. And we know that his attorneys are preparing specifically to suppress that evidence that they found in Altoona, Pennsylvania on December 9th, so that he can probably get a lighter sentence, or he could probably have some type of being relieved in some way, because we know that he's going to jail. I mean, well, do we know, Mel, do we know that he's going to jail? I want to know what viewers think. Do we know that he's going to jail? Besides jury nullification, I would say that all evidence points to him going to jail. Just depends upon how long is he going.
Well, after attending Diddy's trial, I get very questionable about these trials. But in this case, from what I see, I think he's going to do some time. That's just my position now. And a lot of time, maybe even the rest of his life, if they don't even try to take his life,
Yeah. I think that all of that is on the table. And I also think that they're going to have a very interesting jury selection process, what we know as voir dire, and trying to figure out how people feel about the healthcare system and how they figure out about this guy who can put on a sweater and sell it out at Nordstrom, right? You're going to have some takers who are going to want to be on that particular jury. You got to figure out a way as an attorney to go through the process, ask the right questions, get those people off who only want to be there for that 15 minutes of fame. So the jury selection process is the most interesting and important part of a trial anyway, in my opinion. But this one is going to be especially interesting.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I really do appreciate it. Would you like to close out for us tonight?
Well, listen, you know that you and I are going to be on the case, literally and figuratively, in terms of Luigi Mangione, and also other important cases that come up over these next few months. And we're going to continue to do this, continue to take people's questions, and we just want them to join in. And also, there's some cases that might be out there that people want to suggest that we jump into. That would be interesting too. But we're definitely on Luigi, and anything else that is worth talking about. And we're having a good time doing it. So I'm glad everybody joined us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Different voices, but the same song. Living a world where we all belong. Kindness leading the way, breaking the chains. In the symphony of love, the thing remains. Embracing diversity, brighter days in sight. Watching the world sharing love and light. Hearts beating as one in our peaceful flight. Colors of harmony, painting the night. United we stand in love's pure might. Watching the world sharing love and light. Hearts beating as one in our peaceful flight. The colors of harmony, painting the night. United we stand in love's pure might.